Okay, so let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into a concept that honestly, it really challenges how we see ourselves, our communities, and, our fundamental place in the natural world. It's called natural inclusion. And it offers this kind of radical third way of understanding reality, one that aims to maybe free us from those traditional divides that so often leave us feeling, well, isolated.
Or overwhelmed, right?
Exactly, or
Yeah.
overwhelmed. So our source material for this deep dive, it's primarily from A. Raynor's chapter, The Natural Inclusion of Diversity and Community. It's got a great subtitle. Swirls within, swirls and variations around a central theme.
Mm.
And that's complemented by his poem, Surfacing, which is quite evocative. Our mission today is really to distill the most powerful, maybe paradigm-shifting ideas from these works, helping you look at the world and maybe yourself through a bit of a new lens.
Check.
We're going to start by exploring two common but maybe surprisingly damaging ways of thinking that, well, they unconsciously shape so much of our lives. Then we'll introduce you to this profound alternative, a perspective that promises a more sustainable, um, compassionate, and creatively fulfilling way to flourish.
Okay.
This next idea, it really sets the stage for, well, everything else. Raynor, the author, he roots his entire exploration in a really personal observation from his early life.
Right, his childhood.
Yeah, growing up in Kenya, then later moving to the UK. He noticed these two distinct mental attitudes that profoundly influence how we relate to absolutely everything, ourselves, each other, our surroundings. The
Mm-hmm.
first attitude, and he argues it's like deeply embedded in modern rational thought, science, even our language,
Yeah.
is this tendency to categorically divide our sense of self or group human identity from our natural neighborhood.
That's dualism, essentially.
Exactly, what we broadly call dualism.
And what's really fascinating here is how these abstract ideas, they don't just stay abstract, do they?
No.
They show up directly in our social structures, our personal struggles. This dualistic mindset, it leads us to see individual differences not as a strength, or a source of creativity.
That as conflict.
Yeah, potential conflict, disparity. And as a result, we often find ourselves pulled in one of two familiar directions. Either striving, kind of individualistically, for supremacy in a competitive struggle for existence.
Which you see reflected in some political ideologies, for instance.
Definitely. Or the other pull is feeling compelled to subjugate ourselves to some overarching authority, some dogma.
Like in totalitarianism or certain kinds of fundamentalism.
Exactly. So it's this constant pressure. Either outperform everyone else or just conform, fit in.
It sounds like we're caught, between dominating or being dominated. But Raynor suggests there's a flip side to this problem too, doesn't he? What's the other extreme?
Exactly. The other extreme is, well, the complete opposite of dualism. This approach expunges any sense of individual, group, or local differences, thereby unifying all as one. And this can manifest in different ways, like monism, the idea that everything is ultimately just one thing,
Uh-huh.
or holism, where the individual parts only matter in terms of the whole, or even nihilism, denying all meaning.
So it's like unity, but at the cost of individuality. Kind of a one-size-fits-all that flattens out uniqueness.
Precisely. And while that might sound like a good alternative to the conflict of dualism,
Yeah, it seems peaceful, maybe.
it can quickly lead to what Raynor calls passive conformity.
Mm-hmm.
So individual creativity gets stifled. The richness of distinct identities just gets lost in this sort of homogenized whole.
Yeah, right.
The author is very clear that neither of these extremes, on their own, makes consistent natural sense. They're both paradoxical, really, incomplete pictures that lead to inevitable problems.
Okay, so if both extremes have these significant pitfalls, where's the path forward? Where do we find something more sustainable? And this is where Raynor introduces his really transformative concept, natural inclusion.
Yes.
This next insight, I think it's genuinely paradigm shifting.
Natural inclusion, it really helps us understand the true nature of reality. Think of it like the ocean.
Okay.
The vast, silent ocean is like the void, and the waves are the energy moving on its surface. They aren't separate things, right?
Yeah.
The waves are the ocean expressing its energy within that receptive space. Raynor calls it a dance between infinite receptive spatial void and local responsive energetic motion. Darkness and light co-creatively combined in all these variations around a simple theme. It's about seeing the mutual presence of both, always relating.
And this isn't just some abstract philosophical point. He makes it incredibly personal. Raynor explains that all material bodies, including our own human bodies,
Yes.
are essentially flow forms.
Right.
Mutual inclusions of void space and circulating energy in a receptive, responsive relationship. He has this brilliant phrase for it. We are dynamically informed wholes, not rigidly defined wholes.
That's powerful.
Can you feel how that shifts your sense of self? Less like a solid container, more like a dynamic swirl?
Yeah, definitely.
Think of a whirlpool, the energy swirling, or the calm eye of a storm.
Oh.
That gives you a tangible sense of being this dynamic, hollow-centered eye, an inclusion of space and energy, always moving.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture,
Mm.
community, self,
Mm.
natural inclusion reveals that we are distinct identities together in receptive, responsive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
We're not independent little entities set apart from each other.
Right.
It really challenges that common idea of life being just a competitive struggle. Instead, it reframes it as a gift of natural energy flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it means matter and space aren't mutually exclusive, nor are they merged into one blob. They're distinct but mutually inclusive presences.
Okay.
So this raises a really important question.
Yeah.
How does this shift, this understanding, how does it actually affect our everyday interactions, our sense of belonging, even how we see conflict?
That's a great question, because the author points out that individual differences are often perceived by us human beings as a source of conflict. But he argues that in reality, these differences are widely recognized to be an expression of natural evolutionary creativity and complementary partnership.
Exactly. It's fundamental to how life works, not some kind of flaw.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Precisely. We see this natural diversity everywhere. Think about ants, bees, their intricate social organization.
Sure.
Or even those Portuguese man-o-war jellyfish, different parts doing different jobs, essential for the whole colony.
Right.
Think about sexual specialization in species, or profound symbiosis like in lichens, mycorrhizas, coral reefs, radically different organisms thriving together.
Even in our own bodies, right? We need all those different cells.
Absolutely. We wouldn't function if all our cells were identical.
Sure.
He argues quite powerfully that it takes all kinds to make a world, and any attempt to force some kind of unnatural uniformity is just partial-sighted, unsustainable, even cancerous to a natural system.
So just to reiterate that point, our bodies are dynamically informed as swirls of energy around receptive centers of void space, like his painting Holding Openness tries to show.
We are these hollow-centered, hungry holes sustained by natural energy flow, dynamic inclusions of darkness and light. It really does turn our usual understanding of identity on its head, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
We are dynamic local inclusions and expressions of our neighborhood. And crucially, never alone or all one as an entity or whole, complete and entire of itself.
The famous line.
No man is an island, and neither is any group of men or women.
Right.
The problem is, this isn't obvious if we only use that objective outside-in perception.
Seeing things as separate objects.
Yes, Raynor argues we need to add an inside-out view, an intuitive, felt sense of our connection and flow within our environment, not just observing it from afar.
And his own personal journey to this understanding, it's quite moving, and it really highlights these ideas. He talks about his early childhood in Kenya. It was privileged in some ways, but also fearful.
And he saw the stark contrast between his own feeling of stiff dislocation from his surroundings and the warm, welcoming sense of being at home in their natural neighborhood that he saw in the African servants and their children.
Wow.
He even noticed small details like their pallid palms, revealing a kind of kinship with my whiteness despite superficial appearances.
A very early lesson in exclusion and inclusion.
Exactly, a powerful one.
Yeah, and that early awareness, that feeling of cultural exclusion from and inclusion in human and natural neighborhood, it profoundly shaped his later thinking. He realized that this mental dislocation from our natural place can lead towards exploitative tyranny. But conversely, totally dissolving the self into the neighborhood leads to that passive conformity we talked about.
Either works.
Either allows for genuine flourishing.
And the story continues, doesn't it? A traumatic move to England, a London schoolroom, another kind of dislocation.
Yeah.
He describes how abstract mathematical mysteries of whole numbers, fractions, and straight-sided figures basically turn space into a cage, converting the boundless freedom for movement of natural space into a three-dimensional cage and time into a line of separate instants, which felt completely alien compared to his lived experience outdoors, like being trapped by abstract rules.
And he talks about his deep discomfort with a scientific method that he felt cut me as a scientific observer off from the natural world I experienced.
Right.
He realized the standard objective view of reality ignores and the removes from material form what is actually vital for this form to exist and come to life. It treated space like this rigid, empty container, devoid of presence almost, no substance.
Okay, but then what happened next completely changed his view. He had this aha moment.
It's a big insight.
Yeah, he realized what this natural presence removed or ignored by abstract maths actually was. The intangible stillness of void space that exists eternally and everywhere without limit. And this void, it's not rigid or empty at all. It's an active, receptive presence that freely both permits and attracts movement.
Like a vacuum cleaner, he says.
Exactly, like a vacuum. It's not a barrier, it's an enabler, a fundamental part of the whole dynamic.
And this huge realization led him to see that material form and immaterial space are neither mutually exclusive nor one and the same,
Okay.
but distinct but mutually inclusive presences. And this new understanding, natural inclusion, it fundamentally changes how we view things like natural selection.
Which often gets framed as purely competitive.
Exactly. That competitive struggle to fit a predefined box of space called a niche.
Mm-hmm.
It also challenges ideas like social Darwinism or selfish gene theory
How so?
by offering a more compassionate, co-creative view of existence. It shifts the focus from just survival of the fittest towards maybe flourishing through mutual inclusion.
Right, that makes sense. Now let's pivot slightly and talk about the modern call for connection.
Yeah.
You hear it everywhere. We're all interconnected. Let's reconnect with nature.
Constantly.
We often chase these connections, right? Through social media, maybe seeking experiences outdoors.
Yeah, and while there's value in connection, Raynor explains that this popular call can often be a symptom of, not a remedy for what has gone wrong in our relationships.
A symptom.
Yeah, because it often arises from that very same attitude of mind that isolates self or group identity from neighborhood.
Yeah.
We've somehow been led to see natural boundaries and space itself as barriers to communication.
Ah, like in Star Trek, space is the final frontier to be conquered by human enterprise.
Exactly. Raynor says, turn that perception around, and you actually have the basis for natural inclusion.
Okay, so if space isn't a barrier, what is it?
It's a medium, a presence. Raynor reframes boundaries in space beautifully. He says, natural boundaries are interrelational presences, places of in-betweenness that serve to distinguish one locality from another, both as containers and conduits.
Containers and conduits. Interesting.
Yeah. And natural space itself is this ubiquitous, frictionless presence that freely permits movement. So we're never truly isolated. We dwell inescapably within one another's receptive and responsive influence, even without obvious, tangible connections.
Like planets orbiting the sun?
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
No strings attached, but profoundly influencing each other. Our presence affects everything around us and vice versa. We're always in relation.
Which brings us to maybe the dual nature of interconnection. Because while tangible links like paths or networks, they can channel energy along pathways more effectively.
Sure, create a path of least resistance.
Right, like people making path across a grassy field by walking the same way. But that same channeling can also constrain its direction and restrict its possibilities for future evolution.
So too much structure can actually limit growth.
That's what he suggests. Profound. He argues that evolutionary sustainability of a living system requires both collective coherence and individual nonconformity. You need both structure and freedom.
And for a really brilliant, concrete example of this dynamic, real-life interconnectedness, Raynor points us to the fungal kingdom.
Ah, mushrooms and mycelium.
Exactly. He describes these vast mycelial networks, those tiny tubes extending and branching, and this special feature called anastomosis.
What's that?
It's where these branches actually fuse back together, creating true, resilient networks, not just branching out, but connecting back.
Wow.
He mentions the magpie fungus experiment, which showed how fungal growth adapts brilliantly to finding nutrients or dealing with scarcity. It demonstrates how capacities for generation, preservation, decay, and regeneration are all vital to keeping on the move and not getting stuck in gridlock.
So it's a system that balances flow and structure, connection, and exploration.
Perfectly put, it balances them to thrive. Imagine tree branches not just growing outwards, but sometimes fusing back together, creating this incredibly strong, interconnected web. That's fungi.
That's a fantastic image. And the author really brings these complex ideas to life, not just through explanation, but through his art and poetry, too. His poem Surfacing and the painting Landed, Stranded, they help us feel these concepts.
Yes, surfacing captures that shift poetically.
Yeah.
Moving from an abstract vision where space stops and starts at surfaces to the deeper reality where the immaterial, like space, can't actually be cut by the material. Each naturally includes the other.
A realization of mutual inclusion.
Exactly. It speaks to a deep longing, I think.
And the painting and poem Landed, Stranded, they really hit home that feeling of separation when we forget our natural inclusion. He writes, used to be within the sea an identity of you and me submerged in commonality,
Mm.
but now dry, abstracted space comes between us, a separating distance, alienating forms as fixtures stranded in isolation.
Oof. Yeah, that powerfully conveys that sense of loss,
Yeah.
of being cut off.
That yearning for embeddedness.
Absolutely. And the poem's yearning for that mutual inclusion leads to the desire to dive into the clear and swim where it's cool to be in with the pool together.
Ah.
It's about appreciating our dynamic inclusion within the continuous presence of nature, not seeing nature as some object to reconnect with,
But as
as the continuous presence we already inhabit, recognizing ourselves as nature, not separate from it.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening? This deep dive into natural inclusion isn't just, an abstract idea for academics. It's really a profound invitation to reconsider your fundamental relationship with reality, with yourself, with your communities.
Definitely. By moving beyond those paradoxes of dualism, separation, and mammodism,
Yeah.
undifferentiated unity, we start to recognize that matter and space aren't mutually exclusive. They're distinct, yes, but also mutually inclusive presences. As the author puts it in his poem, Beyond Contradiction, the truth lies somewhere in between, throughout and everywhere around in natural circulation.
So it leaves us with this really provocative final thought. If our bodies are these dynamically enveloped holes, these natural inclusions of darkness, void in light energy, then what if the void, the space, isn't an absence to be feared or filled up? What if it's actually a receptive grace of infinite space that makes all life, all form, all energy possible?
Oh.
How might understanding yourself as a flow form, this continuous dynamic expression of energy within space, how might that change how you approach your daily interactions, your sense of belonging, your own creative potential?
And in a world that's constantly pushing us to connect externally, more links, more networks, this raises an important question. How might we instead cultivate an inside-out awareness? An awareness of the inherent mutual inclusion that already exists right here, right now, fostering natural communion and compassion from within simply by recognizing what already is.